As published on nondetail.com. The Temujin became the sole emperor of Mongolian plains after winning over all the rifts within the Mongol tribes. He then expanded his rule by waging ferocious wars, and his territory by the end of his life was 3 times that of the land of Alexander the Great and 2 times that of the Roman Empire, and so he was proudly referred to as Genghis Khan. China was a large empire and a very dominant force in his neighborhood, and as usual China didn't like an expanding force right next to theirs. So, China started to send the warning signals to Genghis Khan. But Genghis Khan, being Genghis Khan, didn't wait but took the war to China and declared war on Jin Dynasty in 1212. But he faced a gigantic task ahead, since until then he had only won over smaller regions and tribes, but now he was to face a giant Jin dynasty in Beijing. His first hurdle came in the form of the Great Wall of China, which he and his troops crossed by walking around it. After this arduous task of walking around the Great Wall of China, they reached Beijing, but to their dismay the fort walls of Jin dynasty were formidable and tall. However, Genghis Khan was in no hurry, and so he decided he would stay outside the fort and lock the Chinese inside the fort and cut off their supplies. This meant Chinese couldn't come out and had run out of their food supplies. This left Chinese starving, and they even resorted to cannibalism. Once Chinese were starved for food and its army was demoralized, Genghis Khan marched into the fort, and it was not difficult for him to defeat the Chinese. Even though Chinese fought hard, they were a weakened force by then. Later on, Genghis Khan took the military knowledge and the expertise from Chinese and established his capital region in Karakoram. What learning does India have from this story of Genghis Khan's conquest of Beijing? 1. The all-powerful have their own weaknesses, and China too may be a formidable force now, but it has its own weaknesses. Which is the South China Sea, or its naval power, or its dependence on sea routes for oil supplies or the exports. India needs to exploit this vulnerability and, like Genghis Khan, should cut off routes for Chinese vessels in Indian Ocean. This will hit Chinese export-driven economy, plus also its oil supply would become questionable. 2. Take the fight to the enemy and at a place of your choice, and not let him get that fight to you, and a place of his choice. Genghis Khan, having sensed the Chinese unhappiness in his rise, didn't let them wage a war on him. Instead he moved fast and declared the war when Chinese were unprepared for a conflict. India should take this conflict at sea, through its naval forces, and not let China take India to the Himalayas whenever it wishes to. It is alleged that China doesn't want to settle the line of actual control, the border disputes with India. And it wants to keep the conflict alive so as to divert India towards national security whenever it wants. 3. Negotiate from the position of strength. Today India have been negotiating with the People Liberation Army of China to move back to the status quo ante. But what India is offering them in return, during these negotiations? India should have something in its hand to negotiate from the position of strength. Like Genghis Khan first expanded into Beijing and then negotiated by taking back riches, machinery, and military expertise back to Karakoram. In the current context, India seemed to have followed the same and have moved its ground forces in certain other areas and has put them on the table for negotiations. India did this earlier with Sikkim too. India negotiated with China by recognizing its One China claim and by not recognizing Taiwan. In turn, China has recognized Sikkim as an integral part of India. 4. China values power and aggression, like it valued Genghis Khan, even though it was more dominant in military than the Mongols. It was reluctant in waging a war with Genghis Khan as it valued Mongolian power and feared their aggression. 5. Last and most important learning is blocking. Yes, like how Genghis Khan blocked the Chinese movement in and out of the fort. In today's world, India can pursue blocking the sea trade route of China. China would be suffocated due to depleted supply of oil and would get anxious when its exports face blockages.